Welcome back and welcome to Fantasy Football Weather Guys. We're here with Week 8. For our new viewers, we are here to provide relevant weather information and how it may impact your fantasy football lineup this week or all weeks. With us and with joining me, I'm Colin Golzinski, the host, but we also have our on-staff meteorologist, Sean Bratton, and Dr. Mike Ventris. How are you guys doing this week?
Good. We're excited for this week coming up. We're going to be talking about essentially one big system that's going to impact things, and then one system last week that had a pretty big impact on a couple games last week. So we're excited to kind of tell you guys about that. And we also have a couple new segments in store for you guys this week as well.
And I'm doing extra good today because I won last week. I'm finally moving myself out of that loser's bracket, trying to get up to you guys. So,
Wait, did you beat one of us last week?
I did not, but a win's a win in my book, and I'm happy. Moving forward, Sonny Michelle, my man Sonny, brought me a 3-touchdown game.
Let's not get you all worked up already. You get worked up pretty early in these shows, Mike.
Yeah. All right.
The question is, how do you feel about him this week?
Well, we'll get to that.
So, like Sean said, we got a fun show today. We're going to be installing some new segments. We have 3 distinct segments we're going to try out this week. We have one called the Whirlwind Round, where we're going to review fantasy impacts due to the weather like we have in the previous weeks. And we're going to talk about the previous week impacts. And then we're going to have 2 other segments. One is going to be called the Lightning Round, and the other is called Thunderstruck.
Oh,
so
man. Amazing names, by the way. I love the weather names there. Sean, you're a big weather weenie.
Super weather related. I wonder who came up with those.
It's a really funny story, right? So we had like a team meeting or business meeting per se to try to draft these ideas out. And Mike and I walked away thinking we're going to have the lightning round. And then we regrouped and Sean was like, oh yeah, we talked about Thunderstruck and Whirlwind. We totally talked about that. And we're like,
yeah, obviously a thing of my imagination, but
we went with it. We're going to go with it.
Let's do it.
So let's talk about those, but let's leave comments or questions or if you have better names, we'll take any, advice that we can get. Just be appropriate, please. So why don't we start with the fantasy football weather whirlwind round?
If you were not watching the 49ers at Redskins, you were missing out. This was an old school slugfest in the rain, and this ended up having a huge fantasy impact on multiple players. I mean, we were anticipating this to have an impact, but more on the first half of the game, and it ended up having a significant impact for the entire game. They received over an inch and a half of rain from this storm, and the score ended up being 9-0. And then on the flip side, we provided a late caution for the Arizona Cardinals versus the New York Giants, who were also impacted from this same system that lasted the duration of their game as well. And that score ended up being 27-21 for the Cardinals.
You know what else was impacted?
What's that, Mike?
My level of enjoyment watching that game. It was brutal.
Agreed. Coming from a Giant fan, I completely agree.
Yeah, so the score ended up being here 9-0, right? The 49ers obviously won this. They were actually a 10-point favor. So they missed that over-under there for the first betting line. And then the second one, obviously, was the 40-point over-under score that was completely missed. So this game actually ended up being the quickest NFL game in over a decade. It was
2.5 hours?
2 hours and 36 minutes to be exact. But yeah, so it was just a tough game to watch. Some of the production there, you obviously know that there was impacts. Quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo only threw for 151 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He had a QBR of 83.4. He actually was able to run 4 rushes for 20 yards. He was sacked a couple times. It seems like Case Keenum really had the impact, and we highlighted in our last week how Case Keenum has not been a good quarterback in games where it was raining.
And I don't know about you, but I had some really good positive feedbacks from some of our viewers and some of my friends who watched us and totally said we nailed it. And I really appreciate that feedback. And I think we should, just keep the interaction up.
Yeah, we love it. We'll take it. So Keenum only had 77 yards, 0 touchdowns. He was sacked 3 times. It was a brutal game. Another player we highlighted, George Kittle. I was worried about having Kittle playing him. Obviously you got to start him. He was the number 1 priced tight end on DraftKings, 3 receptions for 38 yards. And then as you get into in some of the wide receivers for Washington, McLaurin, he's been a stud this year. Only 1 reception for 11 yards. It was tough. I think Trey Quinn was our top wideout for Washington with only 30 yards. And my man, I started Dante Pettis.
Yeah, that was a big question mark for us going in. Dante Pettis or McLaurin, and
Yeah.
both.
And McLaurin actually won with 1 reception for 11 yards because Dante Pettis had
that was the winning line.
Oh, God. It was brutal. Something interesting here, though. Adrian Peterson, he actually overachieved in this game.
Was it like 100+ yards? I thought 126 yards I saw or something.
So he had 81 yards on 20 carries, which everyone thought the 49ers was going to actually stifle him. And he actually was able to break some of that. And I think that has to do with the field conditions, right?
Right. I mean, there wasn't many options.
Yeah, it just you didn't want to give Case Keenum any more plays. So moving on to the next game here, the Cardinals at New York Giants. The over-under here was 50 points. This ended being under that, 48, so it was a miss. The Giants were actually a 3-point favorite in this game, and the Cardinals won. So it was a double miss. So in both weather games, both betting lines were fails there, or unders. So we saw cute quarterback Daniel Jones from the Giants. He struggled in this one. He was sacked 8 times, so he was just getting a ton of pressure. Kyler Murray, he had a little bit better of a day, though I'll apologize. He had 104 yards on the day with 0 touchdowns, but he actually didn't get sacked as much. Now, we did see the running game being preferred, right? Chase Edmonds had his monster game here. He had 27 carries for 126 yards, 2 receptions for 24 yards, and 3 touchdowns. If you had Edmonds in your lineup last week, he was your savior. But there was no way predicting that, that he would get that type of volume. We saw Barkley get the volume back, 18 rushes for 72 yards and a rushing touchdown with 3 receptions. So the running backs did pretty good.
The running backs did do good, but also just with Kyler Murray, don't take that as he did not have a good game from fantasy football, but they were just so successful on the ground with Chase Edmonds. The coaching staff knew we're just going to go with the hot hand. So Kyler Murray did get some rushes in there, and he did provide some value from that perspective. So
with Kyler Murray, though, when we saw the rain actually moving into the stadium, I had him as my quarterback slot in DraftKings, and I took him out. I got worried about that game. I got some cold feet or wet feet, I guess you could say.
Did you just make a weather joke?
I did. Did you like it?
That blew by me. I didn't catch it.
Oh, very nice. So in this game as well, we saw the wideouts. Golden Tate slot guy. He did pretty good. He had 6 receptions for 80 yards on 11 targets. The top receiving option in Arizona was Farrah Cooper. Really not much of an impact. The one guy that really killed me in a lot of leagues was Evan Ingram. 1 reception for 6 yards.
Me too. Lost me in my ESPN league.
He was supposed to have a great matchup against an Arizona Cardinals defense that's been struggling. Now, they did get a player back that did help them, but I think the weather had a role here. So,
Ellison was the one who ended up with the touchdown from Daniel Jones. And you could tell that this was a really good example with some players, the weather gets in their head, and Ingram, the weather was in his head. He had a bad case of the drop skis on Sunday, and he just could not hold on to the ball. He had, I think Mike said this, 1 reception for 6 yards.
Burned me.
And you could tell he was taking off his gloves, putting them back on, taking them off again. He just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, he was all over the place on that. But now I think it's that we concludes our whirlwind round, and we can move forward.
I think that went by like a whirlwind.
All right.
Again,
so,
weather jokes.
They're
plentiful today.
I don't know. I don't have a funny pun for this time. So moving on, I think we're kind of experiencing or seeing that this kind of weather. I don't know what the correct terms are. I'm just going to talk, and you guys can correct me. This type of weather pattern seems to be forming again with the one game we're seeing this week. It's going to be heavy rain, and I think as we have shown or have discussed, that the heavy rain with some moderate wind really does have an impact on the gameplay and on the players and maybe the coaching strategy. So what are we seeing this week?
Yeah, and I think the key thing that you said there, Colin, is heavy rain. This is not just like your garden variety showers. These are larger synoptic systems that are producing some heavy rain and for the duration of the entire game. And so the map that Mike has up here is our mean sea level pressure and 6-hour precipitation map. And we're going to be concerned about the location Foxborough because we have the Cleveland Browns taking on the New England Patriots. And so originally this was this system built up actually, and I don't know if Mike can go back a few time steps, with a digging shortwave trough over the mountain west and picking up some remnant tropical moisture and heading over into the Ohio River Valley. And you can see that this is where it's beginning to develop and move east. So this is not an incredibly strong system. I know some of the colors may be contrary to that, but this is what this is not a sub 1,000 millibar system. And essentially what that means is it's not incredibly strong, but what
Not
it
a
does
bomb
have,
cyclone.
What's that?
It's not a bomb cyclone.
No, it didn't bomb out. And a bomb cyclone is essentially dropping 4 millibars every 24 hours.
And for the non-weather nerds, that term went viral last year, I believe, for a winter storm in the New England.
Yeah.
We see these more in the wintertime where we have these bomb cyclogenesis where there is a very sudden drop in pressure of a storm. And this is not that. But it does have a lot of remnant tropical moisture associated with it. So we're looking at precipitation rates of around 1 inch to 1.5, maybe 2 inches in the Boston, Foxborough area.
It's going to be a lot of rain, and it's going to be right at the game time, and it's going to be the entire game here. It's at least what the models are showing right now. So this is going to be a pretty significant rain event.
So I did say that this is a lot like last week's, but the one thing that to keep in mind though, the field is a little bit different than last week though. We have turf. It's not natural grass, so it may have better drainage, but slippery when wet.
You won't see the mud.
You won't see the mud, but you're going to see, it could be some interesting conditions for getting grip and getting cuts for routes for receivers or even running backs. That is, I mean, we don't really know, but we are saying that the rain could cause some awesomely fun conditions if I was a player.
So the one thing, I think this puts like a really good position for the New England Patriots defense, right? They've been on fire. They're going to come in this game here. It's going to be a low scoring affair because this rain's just going to be, I think it's going to be a heavy event, a heavy rain event. And I think that we've already seen, Cleveland just struggle with forcing turnovers with the ball on offense. So I think this is another good spot for the Patriots defense.
Yeah, there is no doubt about it. I mean, I am definitely I'm locked and loaded if I have the Patriots defense. You're basically playing them against anybody, but typically during these types of games, it's a plus matchup for the offense. But the New England Patriots are so well game scripted, and Bill Belichick taking their main big players out like a Nick Chubb or a OBJ, and they're just so quick to the ball that I don't know how much of an advantage these players are going to have this week on the Cleveland Browns side.
You know what? I actually did something here. I looked up something. So in our ESPN Fantasy League, the New England defense has scored 158 points. That's equivalent to the total year sum of Juju Smith-Schuster, Odell Beckham Jr., and Damian Williams.
And for our viewers and listeners, we have a half PPR league.
Yeah, so half-point PPR. The fact that a defense is out, equivalent to 3 different top 50 players that were drafted, just an unbelievable type of pace that they're on right now.
Yeah, I think the weather will impact play, and I agree with that. But I think the outcome of this game is still Patriots all the way.
Well, it's a good question. So the over under here is
that wasn't a question.
Oh, yeah, that was
my statement.
But I think it's actually a good question to ask. And I think everyone's banking on the Patriots winning here. The over-under is 46.5 with a 13-point New England favor. So Vegas obviously thinks.
What did I tell you this morning? I said I still think Patriots by 14.
You did say that, right? So, but in both weather games last week, we saw those bets, those props miss. So yeah. I think there's another chance here with this rainstorm.
No, I think that's fair point. But
yeah.
Remember, never mind.
Yeah. So getting into some of the fancy impacts. So I think, looking at individual players, I think it's good we start off with the New England Patriots. Obviously, everyone's starting quarterback Tom Brady. He's, Cleveland's been giving up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this year. Brady's ranked 5th this week on ESPN and Fantasy Pros, the 5th overall quarterback. We've seen the Patriots and Tom Brady do good in splits in weather games. But I'm a little worried here that the rain rates might impact this game a little bit more than what we're expecting.
Yeah, and I have some comments about this because for our
Sean
lightning round, this is gonna come up. But I am a little bit hesitant for a couple of reasons with Tom Brady this week, especially him being ranked as a top 5 or 6 QB. I'm pushing him outside of that. I'm looking at him as borderline a QB1.
And if viewers and listeners want to stay tuned and are I believe, lightning round that will be discussed.
Yeah, we'll get to all that good stuff here moving up.
Stay tuned.
Just to focus on some of the running backs here, Sony Michel is coming off a huge 3-week touchdown, a 3-touchdown week. Cleveland's been giving up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs this year. He's going to see volume in this game. He's been seeing it all year, and I think he has a pretty safe floor. Though I'm a little worried that the frequency of touchdown opportunities may not be here. I don't think he's going to get.
You may have said this, but what is Sony Michel ranked?
So for the year total, or
no, for this week, what is he coming in as?
So I think he's coming in as a running back 2. So
okay.
I'm pretty sure he's probably somewhere in like the teens. It depends on where you look.
Right.
But teens to 20s is overall ranking.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would agree. I'm a little bit. I think he's going to have a good ceiling. I think they're going to run the ball. The big question is Rex Burkhead back? And this is typical of the Patriots, right? Yeah. Predicting their run game is so difficult, especially with 3 capable running backs in James White, Rex Burkhead, and Sony Michel. Sony Michel got all of the goal line work except there's another running back that he's escaping my thought right now.
James White?
What's that? No. Who?
Oh, Damian Harris, the rookie?
No. Bolton?
Oh, Brandon Bolton. Oh, my goodness.
Bolton.
That's Mike, you had such a love for him last year, I feel.
No, I do not like Bolton. He just is like that vulture.
He's a vulture. He's a vulture. And so I'm a little bit worried about, I think they're going to have not as many opportunities in the red zone. And you don't know with Bolton. You don't know with Rex Burkhead. You don't know with James White.
Yeah, I mean, James White's got that floor. He's been getting 9 receptions every game. He seems to be safe.
But I think the weather impact doesn't change the strategy of Belichick with running backs. I feel like this is a problem regardless of the weather. It's a problem that happens every game. And I feel like if you are looking at these 3 running backs or any of the running backs in this tier, you're trying to find the value in your daily leagues to see what risk is going to pay off to win.
Right.
And so I think it's important just to know that the weather is not impacting that strategy. Unfortunately, they just kind of load themselves up with options.
And this has been a really typical thing with Sony Michel this year. He had 19 carries for 42 yards last week, but he had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
If he did not get those touchdowns, that would have been a bust week, and we would have been looking at Sony Michel very differently.
Sony Michel is officially a touchdown-dependent running back.
Oh God, big time. He's all touchdown dependent.
Wouldn't you argue that any Patriot running back is touchdown dependent in a sense?
Not James White. James White has been getting a solid floor. He's been getting a ton of targets.
And
he hasn't scored any touchdowns this year. He scored 1 touchdown. I think there's going to be regression to the mean, though. If this is a week where I think James White might actually get that touchdown, I think if he can get that short pass into the flat and kind of just zip past a struggling defense there in the rain, I think that there's a chance here he gets that touchdown.
Yeah, and Rex Burkhead is officially questionable right now, but he's proven to have value. During Pittsburgh, he got 11 points. During the New York Jet game on September 22nd, he got 15 points. So he can rack up the points when needed.
Is this from our league, Sean, when you're referencing points?
Yes.
Yeah, so again, that's a half PPR league. I think this is a great pivot point to pivot to our next segments that we are going to get to, that are going to even talk more in depth of the players that people want to know about we talked about the running backs, the wide receivers, and the quarterbacks, and this leads us to our new segment, the lightning round. Welcome to the lightning round. This is where we're going to talk about relevant weather impacts on production, but what we're going to do is we're going to do a rapid fire concept where each of us has picked 2 names that's more of a sit-start decision or, who is the better play in this situation. And the players have been predetermined. We really haven't discussed it, so it's kind of new information for us. So, Sean, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Yeah, Colin, why don't you take this, and then Mike and I will both kind of give our answer to whatever players you announce, and then you could put in your input as well.
So, great. I'm going to start. This one has to do with some late-breaking news of an IR. I can't think. Oh, Josh Gordon. Wow, I can't believe I just kind of lost my train of thought.
Okay,
sorry.
We all do that.
So my 2 players are Sanu and Stills. Who's the better player here?
Stills.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, I mean, Sanu's coming into a new offense here. His snaps can be a little limited, and Stills is walking into a wide out 2 position now after the injury with Will Fuller. So Stills is going to get that ton of volume there. He's going to be on the outside perimeter. I love his matchup this week.
Yeah, and then he's taken over for like Mike said, he's taken over for Fuller. I think he's going to develop a connection with Watson, and also not to mention they're facing the Oakland Raiders, who's one of the bottom pass defenses in the league. They're giving up more than 300 yards passing per game and around 3 passing TDs per game as well. So I think Kenny Stills is going to scorch this team, and I would give him an upside of around 8 receptions, around 100 yards and a TD.
Colin, who are you picking?
I'm picking Stills.
There you go. That's a sweep.
Okay. So next one. Let's go.
So for my pick here, for the 2 players, I'm going with Odell Beckham Jr. playing in a big rain game, or the new and improved Corey Davis. 3, 2, 1.
Davis.
I will say Davis, but I have an issue with your new and improved. Is it new and improved, or is it a new and different quarterback not suffering from injuries?
I mean, anything we're taking out Marcus Mariota will make Corey Davis new and improved. So I'm all in with the Corey Davis move this week over OBJ.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, he caught 5 passes for 91 yards and a touchdown against Atlanta.
Yeah, but his overall stats for the year is 16 catches with 237 yards. So you take the Atlanta game out, and he's been useless.
No, and against the Los Angeles Chargers, he had 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown there. And this is over the last 3 or 4 games. So my point is,
okay, so
I think
there's
he's
an upside.
improving.
And the only reason why I'm debating this is I did take Corey Davis on this pick, but I think OBJ is such a downside with, going to New England with the weather.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would, in any other circumstance, of course, you take OBJ. I think Corey Davis will have a better game than OBJ, and he'll maybe have a better game than his past, but I don't know if
we're taking out consider the matchup for Corey Davis. He's going against Tampa Bay. They have been a throw pass
bottom barrel.
Yeah, they're just getting wind funneled.
They're analogous to Oakland. They're giving up 304 yards, around 2 TDs, and a like 60 to 70% completion percentage for opposing QBs. So I'm thinking Tannehill's going to thrive here. I think that Corey Davis is going to continue to get targets, and I think he has touchdown upside.
But Colin, you bring up a good point, right? Why would you to think you bench OBJ? Like, you drafted him as your first round pick.
I know. I think in daily fantasy league here, though, you ignore OBJ for this complete week. You look at the value of Corey Davis that he is. I don't know. Did you look up how much he is this week on Fantasy Pros yet? We'll put that in our blog. He'll be talked about. But I think, the mid-range value of a wide receiver, he's probably got a lot of upside on that aspect.
Yeah.
So we're going to our last lightning round, bolt fast. We got Sean's pick. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my pick has to do with QBs. And so, again, we're going to stick at the New England game, and it's going to be Tom Brady in a messy, wet matchup, and this is going to be a little bit tricky here because it could either be Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Brees is super eager to get back and on the field. They're at home facing the Cardinals. So we have either Tom Brady or Teddy Bridgewater / Drew Brees.
No slash. Drew Brees is starting. Drew Brees is playing. Drew Brees is winning this matchup.
I'm going with the Saints quarterback in this one. I'm just nervous about the event.
Wow, so we have consensus. I'm in consensus with you guys, whether it's Bridgewater or Brees. I don't think Brees is going to be back for this game. He has the Arizona Cardinals, and then he has a bye. I don't know why they're going to push him to play in this game against a matchup they should win with a thriving Teddy Bridgewater of late.
Right, Teddy Bridgewater is 5-0.
Yeah, I mean, he's been great. So I don't think Brees plays, but regardless, I think that Teddy Bridgewater is going to take this. Arizona is getting Patrick Peterson back, so you worry about the Michael Thomas matchup here if he's playing him tough. I'm a little concerned about that. But the Arizona Cardinals are giving up 263 passing yards a game, and since they're away in a dome, their average for away games is 300 yards and around 2.5 passing touchdowns. Now, they're vulnerable against the tight end, and we don't know if we're going to see Jared Cook out there, maybe Hill. So there are some iffy markers there, but I'm still going I'm still definitely going Teddy Bridgewater or Drew Brees, whatever the case may be. And just a few more quick notes, the Cleveland Browns have given up. They give up a 67% completion rating, but they only give up around 200 yards a game. So what that tells me is they like to keep everything short. And in a game where there's going to be a lot of rain, I think Tom Brady is going to keep it short and be going to Edelman. But I don't see a huge breakout game for him given the circumstances and the wind and the weather. I would say around 200 to 250 yards and 2 TDs. And I just don't think that's going to cut it over Teddy Bridgewater.
So we're coming to our last segment of the day. It's called Thunderstruck. And this is where we are going to talk about where we each picked a player that we think has a high likelihood of being a bust based on the weather impacts, or in my case, other impacts. I didn't follow the rules. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You can pick other players that you think are going to be a significant bust. So
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of did it to diversify the conversation. We've talked about a lot of the players. We've hit a lot of the high points. So why don't you guys start with your players, and then I'm just going to add to the segment with a conversation about the guy I think that people need to be aware of this week.
Yeah, Mike, why don't you start here with yours, since we just kind of talked about him a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So my bust of the week here, my thunderstruck, is Odell Beckham Jr. Obviously, he's a number one draft. You probably, if you're playing season-long leagues, you're drafting him in the first round. This is still true, though, for daily fantasy. He's been a little bit of a disappointment this year. We did see last week the Cleveland Browns try to get him more involved. He had 11 targets, so they're making an effort to get the ball into his hands, right? However, there's some issues here. Patriots have been the number one pass defense against opposing wideouts, holding them to the fewest points per game. And there's a huge weather impact here event, right? So I'm worried here that the rain and the defensive matchup is going to be a significant stunt in Odell's production. So looking into some weather splits here, I did find 3 games where Odell played in rain, and his yards per reception actually drops to 9.5 yards per game or per reception, and his career average is a 14.1. So there is a drop there in these wet games. I'm not starting him in any leagues, and I'm also not starting him in daily fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, New England is giving up around 160 yards per game. And Baker Mayfield has been the definition of a disaster pick at QB. He's just a bad QB right now, and he's vulnerable to turnovers. The Patriots lead in interceptions and turnovers. I think they're going to take advantage of this matchup. OBJ is a great wide receiver, but as I mentioned, I think they're going to keep the ball short. I think they're going to try to give Odell some slant routes here, but I could see him getting maybe 7-8 receptions, but we're talking around 60, 70 yards maybe. And I just don't think that's going to, get the job done, especially the price point you may be paying for him.
So who are you going with here, Sean Boy, for your pick?
Yeah, and this may surprise some people because you would expect, and we talk about this often, in a game where there is rain, we say, hey, we expect the strategy to maybe change and go to more of a ground and pound type of approach. But my thunderstruck player is going to be Nick Chubb. And similar to Mike's argument of playing against New England has been as stout on the ground as they have been against the pass. They're second in the number of plays and offense even plays per game. People that come into Foxborough only get around 52 plays per game. And so, and my guess is they're going to be playing from behind. So they're going to need to be passing the ball, and Baker's going to be forcing some passes. They're first in allowing first half points. So what does that mean? Well, New England has only given up 3 points in the first half on average. At home, that drops to 2.5, less than a field goal. So what does that tell me? That tells me that New England has a good chance of getting ahead, and that in the second half, Cleveland is going to be spending a lot of time trying to come from behind and possibly abandoning that run game. Well, what about the number of rushing yards per game? At home, 40 yards. They're allowing 40 yards. There are linebackers, and their line is quick. Belichick shuts down any relevant players like an OBJ and a Nick Chubb. Bill Belichick knows, what the offense scheme is and who they're going to be going to. And they're quick on defense. Their linebackers are good. I think they're going to get him out in the flat. Typically, in a game like this, it's offense's advantage, but I think the Patriots are just too good. I think they're going to limit Chubb. He may still get 15 to 20 carries, but we're talking maybe 70 yards. So for those reasons, I think they're going to be playing from behind in games that Nick Chubb has played in the rain. His receptions have dropped a little bit. We'll see what happens this game. I think he'll get the attempts. I think he'll get the opportunity, but the production will be lacking.
So, Sean, I think that your take there is obviously the common one in the sense that he's going up a tough matchup. Like in weather, there's a range of possible scenarios, right? And we have tail distribution events. So we're getting a little mathy there.
Sounds like you're getting more weathery.
Well, no. You start doing PDFs, and that's a mathematical thing, right? But I think that there's a scenario here, a tail scenario, where if the Patriots, if what you said does not come to fruition, and the Cleveland Browns, could actually win this one, I think, and that's not going to be a popular take. And I think if the Browns actually have any chance of winning, it would be on the back of Nick Chubb. Now, obviously, you're not going to go in that favor, but if that alternative universe comes through here, I just
and I hear what you're saying, because hey, guess what? And you're right, Mike. And I have an equation right here for Nick Chubb, and that's big yards equals multiple TDs. When he played the Baltimore Ravens, he had 20 carries, 165 yards, and 3 TDs. When he played Seattle, 20 carries, 122 yards, and 2 TDs. Those were big games. So in every other game except one, he's had 0 TDs. He's been capped as far as his yardage a little bit. And also just another quick stat here. At home, the rushing TDs allowed by the Patriots are 0. And even when they play away, it's 0.3. So they're not allowing teams to get into the red zone.
So question for you, Sean. What class did they teach fantasy football algebra equations of players?
I'm pretty sure that was Weather Math 101. It's
Weather
like the
Math
first class everyone needs to take.
So they tell you how to make equations of fantasy football players.
I mean, what subject is more important than fantasy football and weather? I cannot think of one.
I can't think of anything. So the last player on our Thunderstruck segment, it has nothing to do with this game. Clearly, I didn't read the defined rules that Sean sent around in our pamphlet this morning. I went with my player who I think people need to be aware of is Chase Edmonds. We talked about him a little bit from last week. He had a breakout game. I know his value right now is in mid-range. I think he's in the 17 to 20. He's got about 8 to 10 point fantasy production, depending on what type of league you're in. But against the Saints, the Saints are on a tear, 5-0 with Bridgewater. If Bridgewater plays, we think the Saints are going to win. In the last 4 straight games, they haven't allowed any more than 257 total offensive yards. They're only 34% on third down completions for the Cardinals. I think Arizona here is going to fall behind quick. The running game's not going to be effective. David Johnson was on the sideline, but he was active. He did technically start last week. I think you got to be careful there. I think people may be too hot on him and be too quick with the 3 touchdown game he had last week against the Giants.
Yeah, and also they signed Alfred Morris and Zach Zinner as backups here. So I'm not high on David Johnson coming back, but will these other running backs get some time? I don't know.
Is there a chance here that David Johnson ends up on IR? I'm worried.
We saw that with Gordon, didn't we? Josh Gordon, where they traded up Sanu for a 2nd-round draft pick, and he went on IR.
I'm nervous.
Is it out of the realm of possibilities? I would say not. But the Saints defense is incredibly tough against the run, and they have gotten tougher as the season progresses.
Yeah, Chase Edmonds is a guy that you don't want to target in DFS. I mean, he might be at a pretty good value point, but he's going to go up against one of the best ones.
Right, and that goes back. It's same. I put him in the same bucket as Corey Davis. Beware of the value in the daily fantasies of these players, thinking you're going to outsmart the game.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's going to be a real tough one for people because that was a top waiver wire pickup. Ty Johnson and Chase Edmonds were top waiver priorities this week. So people want to play them. So it's going to be a tough decision for a lot of people who have a lot of injuries or dealing with a lot of injuries right now.
So I think we're good this week. I unless you guys have anything else you want to talk about.
I think we covered a lot of info.
Yeah, no, I think we're good. We covered a lot here. I think that just be sure to keep up to date because, we'll be keeping an eye on the weather for this New England game, and this may be escalated to an extreme Just throwing it out there, but we'll keep you updated on that Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, and like Sean said, we'll keep you updated. We'll, follow us on all our social media, Twitter, FFWeatherguys, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Thank you. Subscribe, podcast listeners. Again, the links will be in the description. We appreciate it. We are liking the following, the positive feedback, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Good luck, guys.